In previous sessions like this, we have approached in various ways the teaching at the heart of non-duality, that if we inquire deeply enough, we will discover that our true nature, our real self, is not in essence different from the Supreme Being, the ultimate reality of all. This identity is the basis of the non-dual meditations, and it is what makes possible the direct experience of reality called enlightenment, which is the fulfilment of our deepest longings. I think it would be helpful for us to focus and reflect further on this together before coming to our meditation practices today. When we first consider such ideas, we notice not identity, but seemingly unbreachable differences between the individual and the whole. Our human condition, our most pressing hopes and anxieties spring from the apparent certainty that we have been born at a particular time and place and will one day pass away. So, the suggestion that the individual and the universal are ultimately not different in nature is a direct challenge to our conventional ways of seeing. How are we to understand these rightly? Can there be anything in common between the individual and the universal? First, let's examine our conception of the great truth, the universal reality, the ultimate goal of all our seeking. This is what has been called the Absolute, the Transcendental, Supreme Being, God. In the non-dual philosophy, it's referred to by the Sanskrit name Brahman. We immediately encounter a challenge here, because what these words indicate is entirely beyond the finite forms that our mind can think of or imagine. When we try to think of the Absolute, we inevitably approach it through what we can relate to, which is our own lives and the world we see around us. And so, we conceive of the Supreme Reality as the ultimate source, arbiter, and sustainer of all phenomena. Whether our outlook is colored by religion, philosophy, or science, our conception of ultimate reality involves its preeminence in relation to the known universe. This may arouse a sense of reverence, even awe, for the supreme power behind the world appearance, which is entirely appropriate, and is one reason why the teaching on identity has to be rightly understood. And yet, we need to remember that any idea of the Supreme Being that is based on its apparent relation to the world we experience is far from the absolute reality, which has no relation to anything finite, being the infinite all. How could there be anything else that it would relate to? It's true that the world as we know it is full of separations and boundaries and gaps. But these divisions belong to our mental apparatus, not to reality itself. So, when we think of the Supreme Being as the creator and sustainer of the world, we project onto it much limitation, which in fact arises in our imperfect vision. Is there anything that can be rightly conceived about the Absolute, God, Brahman? It may be said, with due care, that Brahman is being, consciousness, bliss. When everything that is contingent and limited is put aside, what remains is pure being, pure consciousness, pure bliss. To be clear, these are not qualities or adjectives that apply to Brahman and could be separated, like the sun and its radiance, which will eventually fade. Brahman is absolute being, and absolute being is Brahman. So Brahman is absolute being, and absolute being is Brahman. Absolute consciousness and absolute bliss mean the same. What's the value and significance of these for us now? Is it just abstract philosophy? Is it the exalted but far distant goal of transcendental inquiry? Friends, in truth, nothing could be closer or more immediately relevant to us than existence, consciousness, bliss, rightly understood. We found that our conception of the Supreme Being included elements that had been imposed by our habits of thought. Now let us ask if there is anything out of place in our understanding of ourselves, of our own nature. Is there? The initial and conventional view is that ourself means the one who acts and who experiences the outcome of those actions and the flow of events in the world. Myself, on this view, is the individual who depends on some things, is indifferent to others, who hopes, fears, tries, suffers, and rejoices. But does this way of thinking about ourselves get to the heart of the matter? Does it? Does it distinguish what is truly ourself from everything else? When, for example, we hope or fear, we conceive, do we not, of something or someone, together with feelings of attraction or aversion regarding that object. And when we are active, we are aware of events in the world in which our words and movements participate. So our wants, anxieties, efforts, and so on incorporate objects external to us, which exist and change in ways that have no relation to ourself. In order then to truly apprehend ourselves, we have to precisely distinguish self from even our most intimate cares and deliberate actions. If we persist with this inner inquiry, what remains when all that is not self has been left aside? There we discover in and as our own being that which can never be negated, which is self-revealed, which cannot be divided. To put that positively, we find pure being, pure consciousness, and the total absence of suffering, bliss. Brahman, the ultimate reality, and our true self, which is called in Sanskrit Atman, are the final goal of all our seeking. When we inquire into both, under the light of right guidance, and discern everything that is not essential and in truth belongs to the world of appearances, we find that Brahman and Atman are identical as being, consciousness, bliss. During a previous session, we reflected on the guiding principle that the highest truth does not change. Anything that changes teaches us to pass on to our real goal. Now we can further refine this vital insight. When we leave aside all the changes, our meditations and inquiries will pass on from forms that exist to existence, from conscious beings to consciousness, from finitude to bliss. This is the way to Atman realization. We might ask, if the focus of our inquiry is exclusively Atman Brahman, being, consciousness, bliss, then where does this leave the world, the plane of nature and our lives? Is all this to be dismissed as irrelevant or insignificant? No, to say so would be a misunderstanding. In fact, the non-dual perspective leaves the phenomenal world exactly where it seems to be. What we all call common sense tells us that the world presses upon us, that appearances are often misleading, and that we have to cope with life as best we can. Scientific investigation reveals that some aspects of nature are predictable and controllable, some are not, and that appearances are very different from what underlies them. The non-dual perspective does not contradict common sense or the results of scientific investigation. In fact, non-dual practice helps us to develop the inner resources needed to follow both common sense and empirical investigations consistently. Non-duality, in theory and in fact, simply distinguishes clearly between the reality status of the world as it appears in our experience and the ultimate infinite truth. It presents the possibility of complete fulfillment through true knowledge of self as being, consciousness, bliss. The knowledge of the identity of Atman and Brahman and the truth about their apparent relation to appearances is unlike any other kind of knowledge. Here there is no distinction between the knower and the known. That is why the liberating, direct knowledge of reality is possible and, in a vital sense, is always true. Another question may arise, because this inquiry into our own nature distinguishes so acutely between self and not self. Could it make us cold, isolated, and uncaring towards people and the world around us? It's true that this path of self-discovery does strengthen our psychological independence, and it helps us to discern what really is our own responsibility from what misplaced social conventions may seem to impose upon us. But all this makes us more, not less, genuinely caring and empathetic. The precious quality we call human sensitivity arises precisely because all minds are lit by the one eternal consciousness. You are that infinite consciousness. As we progress on the path and increasingly discern what is essential to our being from what is derivative and changeable, our compassion and sense of oneness will heighten correspondingly. And when the bliss of true self-realization dawns, the light within is revealed as the light which lights the way and the goal for all humanity. So let us now come to our practices for this time. We begin each practice session with a preparation. This could be compared to the way we often begin activities with a warm-up, although in this case it may be better called a cool down. Whatever we call it, this preparation is beneficial because our busy mind has to switch from being in charge of our life to being taken charge of in the light of the higher teachings. In fact, reflections like those we have just done are themselves a preparation for meditation. And one way of preparing for our regular session would be to spend a minute or two carefully reading or listening to a passage of pure non-dual teachings. This time, let us prepare by reflecting for a few moments on these words. Life experience reveals that the things of the world do not bring lasting fulfillment and security. The wisdom teaching is that all experience is lit by one unchanging light, and that light is my true nature. Now we're going to do a breathing practice, and it is this. Breathe deeply and consciously through the nose if possible, making the in and out breaths the same length. On the in breath, say inwardly the word light. On the out breath, I am. Light includes physical light and, more important, that one unchanging inner light which reveals day and night and all experience equally. In truth, we are that light and nothing limited. So let us do the practice together now. Focus on the calm breathing. Establish a rhythm. Now, say to yourself on the in-breath, light. And on the out-breath, I am. Calm breathing, light. I am. Next is a visualization. A number of friends have been in contact to say that they find visualization practices difficult. Certainly, they are not easy. The point is that in fact we are visualizing all the time. Things we want, things we don't, and all sorts of associations that are actually difficult to explain. But if we can visualize something we have consciously chosen, even for a short time, we succeed in focusing a lot of mental energy in the direction we really want to go. So if we find visualization difficult, just keep practicing and remember that every sincere effort we make is priceless, because it will bring us nearer to true freedom. This time, our visualization practice is this. See in your mind's eye a rainbow, the spectrum of colors revealed when light is reflected through water droplets, from red to violet. Make the visualization as vivid as you can. You might visualize the rainbow spectrum appearing in the sun and rain in a spring sky, or in a brightly lit fountain or a waterfall. Remember, the visualization is effective so long as we consciously sustain an image associated with the chosen subject. So for a minute or two, let's consciously exercise our powers of imagination by visualizing a rainbow with all the color spectrum. We focus on the image of a rainbow, the spectrum of light. Now, let the rainbow spectrum disappear, and what remains is pure white light. Pure white light. If any other thoughts or images come up, let them dissolve like a rainbow in the light. pure white light. If other thoughts come up, let them dissolve in the light. Next, we're going to meditate on this text. Myself is not the body or the mind, which are ever changing and impermanent. I am truth, everlasting and most peaceful by nature, most peaceful and by nature reality, consciousness, bliss. Repeat the text to yourself a few times, then focus your attention on its meaning. If other thoughts come up, repeat the text and again absorb your attention in it. Let's do it together now. Myself is not the body or the mind, which are ever changing and impermanent. I am truth, everlasting and most peaceful by nature, reality, consciousness, bliss. Myself is not the body or the mind, which are ever changing and impermanent. I am truth, everlasting and most peaceful by nature, reality, consciousness, bliss. Myself is not the body or the mind, which are ever-changing and impermanent. I am truth, everlasting and most peaceful, by nature, reality, consciousness, bliss. I am being, consciousness, bliss. We began with a preparation to help us make the necessary inner adjustments. It's also beneficial to close the session consciously. Let us do so today by focusing for a few moments on this thought. May everyone, everywhere, find inwardly what is best for them. Thank you for joining me today. As we take up again our roles in the world, let us give everything that comes to us due respect and care, remembering the underlying reality, being, consciousness, bliss.